there, and welcome to another episode of Chat EbT. I'm your host, Mohammed Ebrahim Tayob. Now, those that know me know I love a great mocktail with the M. And I love drinking them. And so I'm very excited because my guest today is the founder of her very own mocktail company. Please help me in welcoming Nabeelah, the founder of La Cabonada.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here. I love the fact that you've mentioned that you love a mocktail.
Absolutely love them. I think, I drink way too many of them. Whenever it's an opportunity to have a mocktail, I'll be ordering a mocktail. So sometimes not too, it's not good the amount of them I do drink. But other than that, I love them.
Don't worry, we've made alternatives like the sugar-free versions that allow you to enjoy yourself guilt-free.
So firstly, I hope I've said the name properly, right? La Cabonada.
Yes,
is that correct?
So it's La Cabonada. And it's actually, I know it's a difficult word to say, but it actually means the carbonated in Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese.
Brilliant. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the story. So as I understand it, and I think people are going to be saying I have way too many accountants on the show. But anyway, as I understand it, you started out your career as going into accounting to owning your own beverage company. Take us through that.
So I wouldn't even say I had an accounting career, to be honest with you, because I was studying at Wits University. I was doing my accounting degree, my BXI, and it was COVID at that time, and I'd started my first company. And then as I had progressed, once I had qualified with my degree and I was doing my honors, I think I had a very pivotal moment where my brother got married and we needed drinks for his reception. And I was just looking at what was available out there, and I wasn't really happy. And I think we often have this misconception that a mocktail is just using passion fruit and Sprite. But really, there's so much more to it. There's bitters, sweeteners. And I think I just went into this deep dive of something to procrastinate not having to study. Don't tell my mom. And so I got very excited over creating the Isfahan flavor, which actually you see on the table here, and it's the pink one.
Okay.
And we actually created that drink by watching somebody make a YouTube video on creating Isfahan, and we made that for the reception drink. And I said, how cool would it be to actually educate people on how a mocktail is made and how we are missing out an entire culinary experience by not understanding how mocktails are made. And so at the end of the year, just like researching this, having a bit of fun, creating some new things, and having a conversation that just happened, by fate, I would like to say, with my uncle. And 6 months later, we then created a mocktail company where we not only produce our own mocktails, but we now also created the brand called La Cabonada.
Brilliant. You know what I love about that story is I feel whenever people are thinking, oh, I need to go into business, right? They tend to overthink it. And, okay, what can I do? What can I go into? But if you hear most of these big success stories, a lot of the time it's just, you know what? We didn't have a drink for my brother's wedding. So I was playing around with a few things and there we go. And I think it's just things that happen in their everyday lives where, you know what, I needed this, but it wasn't available. So I went and created it. I think we tend to, overthink when we're trying to think of these new next great business idea. But I think sometimes the simple answer is just the way to go. As you guys did, it was just a necessity that turned into something much more.
And I think what you said is brilliant. And I think one of the key things in accounting that we often tend to forget, especially when you progress and you become a CA, is simplicity is key, especially in business. If the best businesses are created by simply solving a problem. So I decided to solve my problem by creating a company, which meant that many other people have the same problem. And then we soon came to the realization that no, a lot of people don't drink, not just for religious reasons, but for health reasons. They're looking for healthy alternatives. And you can see that within the markets because you see the decline within the alcoholic space versus where you see the non-alcoholic beverages are now having an increase in production and capacity and demand around the world. And the trend is there. We are trying to create more functional beverages, and that's where we'll fit in.
You're saying that, and I think that you're very correct. There is a big market. I've always been very interested in the food industry, right? And I say I'd love to open up a restaurant in a place like like Santon or something like that. And a lot of people will always go with, you know what? If you don't sell alcohol, it's never going to work. You need to be selling alcohol. You need to cater to that market. When I was living in London, there was a restaurant there that had a dry bar. So they would have a full bar, mocktails, non-alcoholic wine, non-alcoholic champagnes, all of that. No alcohol whatsoever. It was a Muslim-owned restaurant. But that restaurant had so many non-Muslims eating there that sort of opened up the eyes that, nope, there is actually that market. There is that, not only from a religious perspective, like you just said, but from a just choice perspective. A lot of people don't drink due to various reasons. And there is that demand for the products like this.
So I think what you said, and I think what just led me to this thought, is think about most of your key franchises. They don't serve alcohol.
Very true.
They don't serve alcohol, and yet they are still thriving, which tells you on a day-to-day basis, people are not drinking. It's typically for a special occasion, those who do opt to drink. So we were like creating a product that if your boss sees the bottle in the car, don't worry, I'm not drinking and driving, I'm just enjoying a mocktail, but still looking at a product that looks premium and luxury. I think the market is definitely catered towards it. I think there are more and more people who are looking for alternatives, and I think that who better than to create it like myself, someone like myself, who I basically came from the accounting background where we didn't have drinks available when you'd go to these big events. You'd basically be drinking a cold drink in a can. And how many times are you going to be enjoying that while everybody else is socializing? And so I said, what could that we create that's not just a cordial, that's not just a product that somebody has to now mix, but a product that you can just hold ready to drink. You know that there's no contamination. You know that it's a bartender in a bottle, a personal experience just for you.
No, brilliant. I love that. So, you know, a thing that I've always been fascinated, I love looking at the behind the scenes of things, right? So you had this great idea. Now you need to take it into the execution. How do you go from that aspect, idea, to actually executing it?
So I would love to tell you this beautiful structured story of how I created this brand. And I would love to tell you, no, we looked at key demographics, we looked at ICPs, you know, ROIs. Honestly speaking, I will tell you most businesses, and I think something so brilliant that you said was we often make it complex. When you start out young and you're so risk averse, right? You create a business very much going into the space arrogant and ignorant. And I say that coming now as having more humility to understanding this industry. And why do I say that? It's not because I started off thinking that I could rule the world, because you do. You think that I'm going to create this brand and everyone is going to buy it, it's going to be in all the spaces, and I'm going to scale this quickly. And I think that if you go back now, and I would ask myself the same question as I did when I was 22, 21 years old, when I looked at this dream, I wouldn't make the same decisions, but that's also okay. I think every decision that's led me up to making this company is ultimately what led this company to where it is. So you have to go in not knowing everything. You have to go in a little bit, I would say, stupid, to be honest with you, because I think if you looked at all the figures, you looked at all the reasons why this business would fail, you won't do it. You need to just go in with having this passion and understanding and knowing that every person that you're speaking to is going to teach you something. You can't go in saying, no, I know it all and I'm going to succeed. Yes, you know you're going to succeed, but you need those moments of pure, utter regret, pure, utter like breakdowns, those crying moments. Because in that moment when you are crying and you feel utter depleted is when you actually will, like, I would say, come out from the shadows and you essentially will teach yourself things that you never thought you would ever learn.
Couldn't agree more. I always like to say this, my favorite Star Wars character said this, is that failure is the best teacher. And it's true, because that's like what you said, you know, you learn more about yourself during those very down moments. You learn much better by failing the first time. Yeah, it feels like crap and it's not fun, but you don't necessarily make that same mistake twice, which is why it's the best teacher.
100%, and I think school fees, you pay very expensive school fees, unfortunately, but I think there are things this business taught me that university could never, like a degree could never teach you. I think if anybody wants to start a company, just do it. If you find something you're passionate about and it comes to you, sometimes you think that you are actually the director or you are the person who's leading your path, but you're not. It leads you, you get led to that path, whether it's God sent, universal, fate sent, you get led to a path that you're supposed to be on. And funny enough, as you progress in those stages and you open yourself up, you find people who will give you guidance in ways that you've never imagined. Even if it may be for a 5-minute conversation, you didn't know that conversation is what you needed to take you to the next step. So I would say for a business like ours, where I really didn't know anything, we have a beauty. The beauty in our technology, in the technology that we have available in my generation, you have so much. I mean, Chat EbT, ChatGPT.
I make that mistake a lot as well.
So you have so much access to information. You know, it depends how you want to utilize that information. We have access to things like LinkedIn. You have access to the internet. You have access to people. Phoning around, asking questions. I think the biggest thing that people of my generation struggle with is rejection. We don't know how to hear no, and we're so scared to like pick up the phone and ask somebody for help.
That we never end up picking up the phone. Yeah.
Because we often feel like it's either a failure or it's kind of like a, the correct word would be, I think we find it lower than ourselves to have to pick up the phone to ask someone for help, because why should I need to have to ask somebody for help? I can do it myself. But it's not true. I would never ever consider myself as a self-made person. I'm not self-made. There are many, many people, many, many things that helped me get to where I am today. This is a collection of people, sweat, blood, and tears, and not just my own. I might be the founder, but there are many people behind me that helped me, led me to this journey.
No, that's brilliant. You know, as you said that, I think there is not a single self-made person that will say they are self-made. I think we all look at those people and say, oh, you know, this guy was so brilliant. He made it from the ground up. You know, really self-made man or self-made woman. But I think if you actually ask them, not a single one of them will say, yeah, no, I did it all by myself. No, I think we see it, and from the outside, it's very glamorous and it's very nice. But on the inside, there's a lot of steps that go into it.
A lot. And I think also with a lot of, I think when creating a company, you asked, how do you execute? I think the execution is so simple. It's, what is my idea and who do I know that has more knowledge than me about this? And you phone them. And in that one conversation, by simply networking yourself, by putting yourself out there, that person will link you up with 2 to 3 other people. Do you know, I often had a mentor who told me you need to spend 15 minutes every single day just networking. And networking doesn't mean I have to go onto LinkedIn to go find the most professional I know and speak to him. It means sometimes sitting on a plane and talking to the person next to you, or sitting on the bus speaking to the person next to you, because you don't know, that person could be linked to somebody in your field that you would need. We have such a fear of, you know, going into public spaces and speaking to people. We often want to sit on our phones and not interact. You missed so many opportunities that way when you do it, when people operate this way. I think people need to get out there, especially my generation. We need to get out there. We need to get over the social awkwardness. We need to get to a point where we are happy to walk into spaces and places and say, hi, this is my name and this is what I do. Mm-hmm. We need to get over this fear of like somebody looking at you and say, oh, I don't want to get to know you. And so what if they say that? You need that rejection to get you to overcome the fears that you have built within you.
No, very, very true. And I think even going back to what you said, you know, the fear of the rejection. I think, you know, one thing I've learned recently as I've started up, you know, doing my own consulting and that. And now and again, you go for these pitches. And, you know, sometimes I have a friend that we work a lot professionally side by side. And the other day I told him, you know, this pitch, it went horribly. But my takeaway from it is, look, I wasted half an hour of my time, not really, because I got to practice my pitch. For the next time, when there's somebody that's very interested, I'll have a more refined pitch. And I sort of look at it that way, that yes, there's going to be rejection, but look at it as, what are we taking away from that rejection? For me, it's every rejection is me refining my pitch so that the day that I get it, it's going to be a perfect pitch, you know? And I try and take away something at least, from every rejection. And I think that's just unfortunately the way we have to look at it. Yeah, it's going to happen, and it sucks, but it's the way it works. You know, Walt Disney got rejected from a newspaper company for his cartoon strips. They weren't good enough, and then he became Walt Disney. So I always like to think of those things that, you know what, it's just one step along the way.
Yeah, I think the thing people often tend to forget is not everyone's going to see your vision. So try to align yourself with people who have the similar vision to you or know where you want to go. A lot of people often follow people or take advice from people to tie shoelaces, but they're not even wearing sneakers.
Yeah.
So where are you taking your advice from? I think we're so quick to like listen to criticism. How many times people would have told me, like when I started this brand, like, oh, I don't think you should name it this. I think you shouldn't do this flavor. Sometimes when you're busy in your innovative phase or you're busy in your founding phase, it's actually better not to discuss what you're doing with people closest to you. And I say this because we often fear, as much as you think you don't care what anybody says and it's my opinion that matters the most, it's not true. Other people's opinion do heavily impact you. But it's important for you to have a very strong vision of what you're looking for and also to know where you want to go. So yes, you should take criticism, but I think it's also important to remember what is the ethos of what you are building, because you can lose what you're building very quickly. Do you know how many ideas or how many people have looked at the the brand before I even started and told me, I think that you're making a silly mistake. Why would you even launch this? I can't tell you, I went to a spa. So a spa is quite independent. You're able to stock your product there. I met with the owner and he looked at the product, and this was in my very beginning stages. I obviously went as a new entrepreneur, a little bit confident, but obviously shy and nervous about my product, feeling uncertain. And the owner of the spa had looked at my product. He's like, oh, it's not as good as the competitor product. And then he looked at my social media and he was like, oh, you don't really even have a social media presence. I wouldn't really stock this. And then proceeded to talk 10 minutes to me about another brand that's in the market and why that's so much better than what I've created. And essentially telling me that I've wasted my time. Only for me now, in this time of maybe 1.5 years later, for us to have grown our social media presence and for us to have pitched our product to checkers. So my point being is, so one owner at Spa told me a story about why I should have closed my company down. Could have gone at home, cried about it, and then never ever gotten up again. Versus I was like, I will prove to you that I will get here. And I don't need you to get here. And that's sometimes what you need. You need people to tell you no so that you can prove them wrong. And funny enough, it's always those 5-minute conversations that tend to change your life and tend to change the direction of what you're thinking you want to do.
True.
And in the same way, I actually am really happy for him telling me what he told me, even though it didn't feel great and I probably felt the worst I had ever felt. And I still remember that conversation till today. It pushed me to do something that I obviously hadn't done within my business. It pushed me to get things done that I didn't do because he did see the deficiencies that I didn't see. And it was the hard things that you don't want to hear that people tell you that's the best advice you'll ever get.
Yeah, because I was just thinking as you said that it although, like you said, it probably didn't feel very good, but it also gave you that little bit of a direction. Like maybe before that meeting, you didn't realize that the owner was going to be concerned of how many followers you have on social media. But then that probably said, oh, you know what, I need to actually sit and work on my social media before my next pitch, because that's something they might look at. So you're taking away something from it, because it might have not been something that was on your mind. Hey, I need to grow social media for this mocktail product that I'm going to be going door to door and selling.
100%.
Yeah.
I think also the other thing with a brand like ours, it's so important that you not only surround yourself with people who will constantly motivate you, but I also think it's important to be with people who, when I talked about the vision of how you direct yourself here and how I was able to get here, it's by simply having conversations. It's by discussing the struggles that you go through. A lot of people look at social media and see one image and have an assumption about yourself or a brand. I'm not here to tell you this journey is easy. In fact, I tell most 20-year-olds, go and enjoy your 20s. Don't do what I've done.
100%.
Because a lot of my 20s was given up for this brand. I worked 7 days a week. I was at factory at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, coming home. It's not glamorous. A lot of the time on social media, we see a very glamorized version of what a brand is, of what a company is. There is a lot of hard work that goes behind the scenes. There is a lot of nights of dedication, sweat, tears that go through this for you to even be able to one day stand up and say, oh, this is my product and I'm proud of it. There are days where you don't feel proud of the things that you've done. You even feel worried and concerned. Have I made the right decisions? Have I created the right brand? And a lot of that self-doubt actually builds you up to only make yourself better. If we think we are perfect and we are already sitting on like the highest pedestal, where to? How do you go up?
Yeah.
So I always say, for me in my life, and I think it's very important that young people have this, and people who are starting businesses have a support system. And when I talk about a support system, it may not always necessarily be your family, it may necessarily be friends, it may be people you are surrounding yourself with in business. I've been very fortunate in my lifetime to be surrounded by amazing people in business who often are willing to give you advice and offer you mentorship. Little bit of advice. They are willing to give you time. I think if anybody gives you time, you must value that. Because very few people will give you time, energy, assistance, and a contact. Getting one number from somebody is them giving you their effort and time. And so you really value that. If you start valuing people's time and their energy, you will be able to progress yourself to places you have never ever thought you would.
No, very, very true. I fully agree with that. You know, we spoke a little bit before our chat today. And the one thing I found absolutely fascinating, I really want to talk about it, is the fact that you mentioned that you guys went into manufacturing without really knowing if there was going to be a demand for the product, right? And I thought, wow, that's actually quite brilliant, but I'm sure it must have been very, very scary at the same time. Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, I started this interview telling you I started this business very dumb. So I think that would be one of the key things. But when we started this company, I think we went into manufacturing not really understanding or knowing whether or not we'd have a demand for the product, because we at that time thought that was the only way to market. Obviously now with a lot of school fees, I know that isn't the best way to market. But at the same time, what it does, tests your faith. It tests your faith in God, that you know whether or not you are waking up tomorrow, that your bills will get paid.
Sure.
It's another level of faith. I think if you ever wanted to test your faith, you go into business.
That's the way to do it, yeah.
So when we started the manufacturing facility, the fun part for me is, and why, although in theory you wouldn't ever start a brand in South Africa this way. So most brands, just to give you a bit of background, in South Africa actually start with co-packing. You would create a brand and then you would find a manufacturing facility that has already been manufacturing a product similar to yours. They would manufacture it for you, and then your job as the brand owner would simply be to market, to deal with distribution, and to basically help scale your product to the masses. What we have done is we've created the entire chain system. So in the sense of we are now manufacturing the product, and then we're still dealing with branding, we're still dealing with marketing, we're dealing with distribution, and now we're trying to get it into the end user's hands. So why does that make our product very different, and why does that differentiate our brand? Number one, there are very few and far brand owners like myself who are both female, who are 26, who are young, who are entering this manufacturing space. Most of the manufacturing space actually is a monopolized industry. So you won't actually find a lot of people like myself in this industry, especially at the scale that we're trying to do production. Okay. At the same time, understand that I come from an accounting background. I know nothing about machinery. Yeah. I know nothing about food safety. I know nothing about manufacturing. But I had to learn all of these steps. And that's what actually makes me the best business owner and brand owner that I can be. Because unlike most brand owners who manufacture their own beverages, I actually do my own formulation. And most people, when they come to hear that, they're very shocked because they don't realize that that's a real thing. When I talk about formulation, I talk about the fact that I sit in the lab and I create my flavors. And I sit there and I formulate and I develop to the point where I've got flavor houses and flavor labs who actually contact me to help them for development for other brands.
Oh, wow.
And to the point where you now learn not only how to develop your own flavors, obviously with the help of my business partners, we also co-founded in this brand, but also then you get to the point of manufacturing. When we first started, I was running those machines. I learned about breakdowns. I actually sat there and I was like, I shouldn't have studied an accounting degree. I should have gone into engineering. Yeah. And you learn about breakdowns, you learn about carbonation, you learn about so many little factors that you as a 24-year-old girl would have never thought in her lifetime. You're sitting in working boots and you're busy jumping on machinery and you're learning to run a manufacturing plant that you never thought you would have ever been doing in your lifetime. But in that moment and in that experience, you don't realize how amazing life is that it led you to that moment.
No, I can imagine.
That you were meant to be there. But in manufacturing our own product, we're able to not only make sure we standardize our quality, we're able to make sure that the product in itself is the best version it can be, because we've specialized our product. We've made our product so special that there are key features in our product that you won't experience in other products. And one of those examples is that if you open our bottle of La Cabonada, while you're sitting in a social setting, even after 1 hour, there'll still be gas in there.
Oh, wow.
And that's the whole point of creating a socialized beverage. We didn't want to just create a beverage that, it's just a carbonated drink. It's not. There's so much more that goes into creating a mocktail like La Cabonada.
Brilliant. Before we wrap up, one thing I do want to discuss, and you mentioned it a little bit there, right? It is Women's Month. So, and I always found this topic very, very fascinating, is being a woman in business it comes with a lot more challenges than what we men face, right? So firstly, but now you adding the aspect of being a young woman in business, and then on top of that, being a young woman in manufacturing, as you mentioned, there's not a lot of women in this field, working on the machinery and everything that you just went through. Tell us a little bit about that. What has that experience been like?
So when I started, funny enough, I've never been the type of person to go out to look for people to not only compare myself to, but I never ever looked for people to mentor me. It was never a concept that I looked at, and the reason being is because I am fortunate enough to have an amazing father, an amazing uncle, an amazing aunt and business partners, an amazing mom who have not only pushed me, and I always like to say my dad is the person who told me I can fly to the sun, but my mom holds me by the ankles to make sure I don't get burnt.
Brilliant.
I had an amazing father who pushed me who told me I could do anything I ever wanted to do. I don't think there are many fathers, unfortunately, well, specifically as an Indian Muslim, who would have told their daughters to go into manufacturing.
Yeah.
And I say that as a reality of the situation of life, where in society a lot of women are not told to go into manufacturing. My father didn't do that to me. He told me I could do it all, and I believed him, only because of him. And in that way, it meant that I had opened myself up to this experience. And by opening up myself to this experience, I had found other women in manufacturing who had given me guidance, who had led me. But at the same time, even those who are not women, a lot of men do want to see women like us succeed in these spaces, more than people would have ever assumed. Because why? A lot of those men are also fathers to daughters.
No, very, very
And
true.
because of that, they want to see us succeed. So more times than not, I tend to find the men who are like my father's age, who have daughters like myself, they look at me and they often tell me, I also want to see my daughter succeed. And just because of that, they often give me so much guidance. They guide me into this manufacturing space, they guide me into distribution. They help you so much into understanding and learning. And I've been fortunate enough to be surrounded by people who are absolutely incredible, like my ops managers, my engineers, my uncle, who have helped me and given me guidance on getting into manufacturing, that I've actually never felt like, oh my gosh, I don't belong here. I've never had that feeling of I don't belong here. All I've ever felt was, no, we need more people like me here. And the only reason why I tend to put myself out on social media, I don't need me to build this brand. La Cabonada is strong enough to stand on its own. It's because I'm here to motivate and inspire people. When we die, we don't die with ourselves. We want to die with a legacy and a message that we leave. I want to be able to spread the word that no matter who you are or where you've come from, if you have a dream, you can build it and you can succeed, because I am living proof sitting here today.
Brilliant. So the last question I always ask, and it's something you kind of touched on there, and maybe answered it a little bit there, but I'm going to push you a little bit more. And the question is, what message would you like people to take away from our chat today?
If I can do it, so can you. And that's it.
Brilliant. No, I love that. Nabeelah, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so fascinating hearing about this brand. I really, firstly, I'm looking very, very forward to tasting them. But, really wish you guys all the success and growth in the future. You guys got an amazing product here. It looks spectacular. So I really hope that you guys go from strength to strength. And especially, in all honesty, the way you have this outlook, I really love that. I think it is the way that we all need to actually look at things and think about things, especially things like you mentioned around networking and pushing against those discomforts, that I think is just so important. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing all that wisdom on the chat today.
Thank you for having me. And if you're looking forward to seeing more of what we are going to do and create, go and follow us on our Instagram page at la_cabonada_SA.
Brilliant. Thank you. All right, that's our show. As I mentioned, I really love how Nabeelah touched on a lot of great wisdom there, but pushing against those discomforts, going into areas that you might not have thought about going into before, and just taking something as simple as an idea and running with it. My name is Mohammed Ebrahim Tayob. You're watching Chat EbT. Until next time.